Today on Locked On Red Wings, is Sam Bennett the solution in the top six?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for C&G newspapers, while I'm a color commentator for Oakland University, ACHA D1 men's hockey. And Scotty, we have another free agent profile to do. If people are wondering why we're knocking so many out in a row, it's because last year we waited too long, and guys we wanted to talk about got snatched up before free agency even hit. So we're trying to take advantage of these hypotheticals, fun hypotheticals, while they're still just hypotheticals. Another really fun one to talk about today, Scotty, is Sam Bennett of the Florida Panthers. Back-to-back days, we've talked about Florida Panthers pending UFAs. They have a lot of guys coming off the books and a lot of guys who, if they hit the open market, are going to be commanding a lot of money, and he is certainly one of those guys. Scotty, like yesterday, it's not should Detroit Red Wings pursue him? It's what does he bring to Detroit that they want?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of mentioned it in the intro there. Like this is a guy that would immediately, I don't know if the word solidify is the best word choice, but he would definitely be a staple, and you would pay him as such to be a staple in your top six. And when you look at what this team desperately needs, they need to round out that top six, and they especially need kind of like a bona fide guy up the middle in top six, and Bennett can certainly be that. So yeah, like the fit is obviously there, and on the ice the play style makes a ton of sense. It's just, again, a matter of whether the logistics work out in the Red Wings' favor. But yeah, in terms of the lineup card, I think out of all the conversations we have, this might actually be the easiest one we talk about. Like it's pretty cut, dry, and simple where he would plug in.
Yeah, I mean, he would immediately become either your second line center, your top line left winger. I mean, This is a guy who can play either position. Both are positions of need. We talk about here on the podcast, Marco Kasper might have locked up 2C. He might have. And if that's the case, you can slide him easily on the left wing. He is a player who has a nose for the puck. He is not afraid to go into the corner and get it, win those battles to feed more skilled players like Larkin and Raymond, who you would presume he'd be playing with. But if you think Kasper needs a little bit more seasoning, because again, as great as he was, there were still elements of his game that needed to improve. In the faceoff circle,
put him at top line wing too. Just like, he was great. That line was fantastic there. So
you swap those guys out. You put Sam Bennett at 2C, which is where he's been playing a lot this season, and he's been having a great year. Career high of 51 points. He's had 25 goals this season. And he, by the way, is tied for first in the playoffs for goals scored with Mikko Rantanen. So he has become a proven playoff performer, which I know for a lot of people who had bemoaned us wanting Mitch Marner, a 100-point score in the regular season, this is a guy who you don't have to worry about that with. And that physical style, again, it's kind of like with Aaron Ekblad. Like we just mentioned a lot of things that this team, he brings that this team needs, but most of all, it's that physical style. He also leads the playoffs with the most hits. So, like, this is a guy who is going to do it all for you in the offensive element. He is power play unit 2 for the Florida Panthers. So you bring back that conversation we had yesterday with Ekblad. You get a guy to bolster your second power play unit because a lot of the production came from the top unit this past season. He does not play PK, so that's going to be an element that you still need to address. People to play on the penalty kill. I think he averaged like 4 seconds a game on the PK with the Florida Panthers.
But you can play too, though, which
power play unit 2, which they need. So he's a guy that fits a lot of and checks a lot of boxes that this team needs, but none more so than the fact that he makes you tougher to play against, which is why a lot of people want him. And I understand that a lot of people want him because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you were to poll the fan base on, the attributes that they want the Red Wings to bring in right this summer, I feel like that physicality and roughness and, toughness, et cetera, would be pretty high up there for a lot of fans. And I think that this kind of, kills a lot of birds with one stone. Like you mentioned, I mean, outside of the penalty kill, he really does fill every other, even if they're not like glaring huge needs, he does fill a need in some capacity, really in a lot of different situations. So yeah, I think that, especially, playoff performances, etc., that he, had a hearing for an elbow. Like, there's been a lot of that grittiness and edginess that people point out with players of this caliber. So he certainly checks that box.
Right, and unlike Ekblad, who we discussed yesterday, he doesn't have that lengthy injury history that stands out as a red flag. He is, as when July 1st hits, he will be the same age as Aaron Ekblad, 29 years old, but he is still on the correct side of 30. I'm hearing people talk about, like, we don't want this player, he's already too old at 29 years old, and I'm like, you guys realize that people don't hit free agency before 28 very often. Like, if they're a good player, they're probably going to be there until at least 28. So 28 is usually the youngest player you're going to get. So 28, 29 is like, that's the best case scenario in a lot of instances for UFAs that you want to get, because they're still on the correct side of 30. Everyone else is going to be 31, 32, 33 or older. So if saying, no, I don't want him, he's too old at 29 years old, is just it's like, I don't want anybody in free agency because they're too old at that point, which is, I mean, if that's your take, you want everyone to be homegrown, sure, but some players you're only going to be able to get through free agency, and Sam Bennett is one of those guys, and he's 6'1", he's 194 pounds according to Puckpedia. I don't know when that was last updated, but, right side of 30, big boy who's not afraid to throw the hits. Second in playoffs, by the way, I was wrong. He's second in the playoffs in hits, first in playoffs in goals. He pretty well-rounded player, gives you a little bit of everything that you need. There are red flags with him that, concern me. And I don't know how much is red flags with him, but more red flags with Detroit in the past, repeating same mistakes. But I mean, I want to get to that in segment 2. So unless you have any other positives to add, we can kind of just go to a quick early break. He just checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much everything rather. I mean, you mentioned career high in points. He's finished this year with 25 and 26 goals and assists. I mean, all good things. So I think really the big conversation around him is the logistical side of bringing him in and whether it makes sense for the Red Wings. So we can get to that.
Stay tuned to segment 2 of Lockdown Red Wings.
Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Well, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. As you all know by now, I absolutely love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, well, the in-shell options are a classic favorite too. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
So close. Segment 2, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. No, it wasn't bad at all. Much better than you were locking the rust off yesterday. I won't give you too much crap for that.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's all right. Knocking the rust off. It's all right. It's all good. So yeah, talking about the cons with Sam Bennett, or possible cons, I should say, things that may or may not happen.
Concerns more than
concerns. Yes. I think my first one is the contract projection. I think any conversation we have with Sam Bennett has to do with the concerns we have regarding possible contracts, because this is a guy who is projected, according to Evolving Hockey, most likely to receive a contract at 7 years, $7.6 million. And that's 44% likelihood. Again, this is just projections, but I don't see any projections less than that, and that's concerning. Other projections I see have him up as many as $9 million a season. And that, to me, is a deal breaker, Scotty. I don't know about you. I mean, as much as I love about this player, the contract projections for him scream to me repeating the same mistakes we made already with Comp and Comfer at inflated prices, right? This is a guy who made a career high of 51 points. Cop and Comfer were the same deal when they signed him. They signed them, and they signed each of those guys to 5-year deals at $5.6 and $5.2 million. Now we're talking about signing a guy with another career high, coming off a career high year, going into free agency at 7 years, $7.6 million as the most likely projection. That to me is a major concern.
Yeah, and I think that this is the biggest point of this is the biggest question of the entire conversation, right? Where it's with the salary cap going up, a lot of these projections and a lot of these players are going to get price tags thrown at them, and I think that a lot of fans are going to maybe scratch their head or yell or scream or whatever because of the salary cap adjustment. Like, there is going to be a huge kind of, for lack of a better term, inflation of contracts. And I think that I'm glad you brought it up first. I think that Bennett is kind of like the prime example. Like, this is a guy that is going to get a fat contract. And I think a lot of people are going to look at the production and look at what he brings to a team and kind of go, wow, that seems super high based on what that has gone in the past. But because of, teams having more money to spend, that's just kind of the situation that they're going to be in. Now, obviously, there's the question of whether he's going to leave Florida too, just like yesterday. And we'll get to that, I'm sure, in a second here. But like, I completely agree with you. And I think that it is the biggest point surrounding him for any team. Is just going to be there's going to be a market, because I think a lot of teams are going to be willing to pay a pretty penny to make sure that they have that, whether it's, again, 2C or even top line wing kind of solidified for whatever he ends up getting 4, 5, 6 years going forward. And I think he's going to get a really big contract. I don't want to call it an overpay because, like, percentage of salary cap and whatever.
Well,
like, if
you can call it an overpay because it's free agency. Everybody's overpaid in free agency.
Right, but as I said during the trade deadline, like, at some point that's just the market. That's
Right.
At some point at some point the, like, we are stuck in the past. If everything's just an overpay, that's just new market value. And so I think that it's going to probably be the correct quote unquote market value, but that is going to be much higher than people are used to because the market value is going to skyrocket this summer.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like 7 by 7.6 would be a tough pill to swallow, but I could deal with it. I could deal with that because of everything you just stated. With the salary cap rising, that might be the new 5.6 you paid for Cop. That might be the new 5.1 you paid for Comfer across 5 years. That might be what you have to pay to get a guy of Sam Bennett's caliber in the new salary cap era, in the new 95 to 105 that'll be next year era. So I could deal with that. But once you start getting above Larkin's number, like some of these people saying like $9 million for a guy who has a career high of 51 points, I don't care how physical of a player he is. I cannot condone that. And that's where I draw the line. 7.6, I could deal with. And that might look good in a few years with the cap continuing to rise. It would be a tough pill to swallow right off the bat, but you desperately need a physical element. And like you said, the market is the market. At a certain point, you have to overpay for people to, make a difference on this team. You'll have the extra money to spend anyhow. It's just some of these projections I see for him seem so absurd. And if a player signs him to $9 million contract for 7 years, hey, good for Sam Bennett. He got his bag, but I would not be willing to pay that much for a guy with a career high of 51 points. And notably, a guy who's He does not play a two-way game, right? He plays a very physical game, but his underlying defensive metrics aren't great. And during the regular season, he was a relative negative player compared to some of his line mates. Not by much, like 1% relative, but still. That was a very good Florida Panthers team, so that might not be the case on a worse team. But at the same time, you have that conversation we had about Gavrikov of whether or not he's riding the coattails of or contributing to. I think his physical presence definitely contributes to that game style, but I think playing with the quality of players that he plays with may also be elevating some of those career high numbers, kind of like it did for Comfer when he played with the Colorado Avalanche, kind of like it did for Kopp when he played with a very good Winnipeg and Rangers team. So that's why it's when you look at that number and you look at that career point, it becomes difficult as that number continues to rise in certain projections.
Yeah, so I completely agree, and I want to make it clear. I think that that 7.5 number is the market value changing. I think if you hit 9, that is an overpay. Like I would completely agree with that. I'm not trying to make it sound like you give Sam Bennett 9.2 that's just like, oh, that's the price of business. Like, no, that if that number is hit, I would agree that is an overpay. But I think when you see people talk about giving a player of this caliber that's probably going to get you a mid 40 point total on a consistent basis, getting 6.8, 7.2, 7.5 even mil, I think that's just now probably the price of getting somebody that has this style. But yeah, you lose me once you kind of cross 7.5, to be honest. I don't think I'd give him 8 either,
especially across a 7-year span. And again, as the cap rises, it might look better and better, but it's just
he'll get older and older and less productive too at some point.
Right. Yeah. You're going to get probably, again, he's going to be 29 by the time that contract is signed, assuming he leaves Florida. You're going to get 4 good years. So the front half of that contract, you're going to get good, at least physical production out of him, if not, scoring production. But you're just paying a premium for a guy with a career high of 51 points, and that to me is a concern. And it that might just be letting my past demons haunt me, right? With Kopp and Comfer getting as much. And again, in defense of those contracts don't look as bad anymore because the cap is rising. It's still a lot, especially to this offseason coming up. But next offseason, you're going to have $30+ million in cap space to play with all these contracts coming off the books. So it's, it is a little bit of column A and column B in this situation. It's just, free agency is expensive. That's why I'd rather go for like the superstar player right off rip rather than the top 6 winger.
That's a beautiful point. I think that's I think that is the point that we have been trying to convey, and that I've been reiterating since March, is like, would you rather spend 7.5+ mil on Sam Bennett, or would you rather just empty the tank on 100-point good defense Mitch Marner? Like, that, to me, that is the entire point, and that is the issue with what the Red Wings have been doing every free agency for the last 3 years. Is they have chosen to overpay on the middle six type of guys that are needed, obviously, and you need to have a lot of them, but they have chosen to overpay for those caliber of players in free agency, as opposed to spending a couple more $1 million and getting the high end of the high end. And now you have a situation where you have JT Compher and Andrew Kopp level production in those guys, because you didn't just take the big swing. And it's not even like big swing makes it sound like a risk. You think Mitch Marner's just going to like wake up tomorrow and be a 40-point producer that's awful at defense? Like, probably not, man. I don't know. I think that is like the entire that is the entire point. What you just said, that is literally the entire point of the offseason. It's like, is the difference of $2 to $3 million a year worth 50 points and defense? Yes, I think pretty comfortably,
right,
especially with more salary cap.
Yeah, and to make it clear, like, if we can get Sam Bennett, I would definitely want Sam Bennett.
Yeah, I'm not anti at all.
Yeah, he makes this team so much harder to play against, just like the conversation with Ekblad yesterday. But with a guy of Sam Bennett's caliber, I have a line I'm not willing to cross. And for me, that's when you get into the $8 million range, right? When you're talking about him making more money than Lucas Raymond or Dylan Larkin, I start to get a little bit queasy. If it's the salary cap projection of 7 by 7.6, I can live with that. I can. But it's just some of these projections make me queasy. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
But
no,
anyways, I digress. We have to talk about whether or not, one, he'll leave Florida, because we had this conversation with Ekblad yesterday, and I don't know if Florida's going to want to let him leave. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, so we talked about this yesterday with Ekblad, and Sam Bennett is, again, coming off a career high, just reestablishing that for context. And the Florida Panthers are going to be set to have, let's see here, $19 million in cap space to spend this offseason. Obviously, to reset again from yesterday's episode, that's because they have UFAs in Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, Nate Schmidt. All 4 of those guys, Nico Sturm too, all 5 of those guys are meaningful role players to top-line players on this Florida Panthers team. So they will have decisions they need to make on who they are going to bring back and prioritize. Do you, Scotty, feel like Sam Bennett will be a priority for them to bring back?
Man, if you would have asked me before the postseason, I would have said no. I think that maybe he is quite literally playing himself more into that conversation. But again, when you talk about value and production, obviously he is immensely valuable to that team, and he brings that physicality while also being a solid enough point producer there. Like, obviously he holds and plays a big role on the team and has been, as you mentioned, fantastic in the postseason. But if his market value is $9 million, then no. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, I think that Florida has, as you mentioned, so many guys coming off the books this offseason and over the next couple where they are going to have to pick and choose who they spend money on and who they don't. And I don't think $8+ million for 50 points, whether it's with a side of a physical presence in the lineup card or not, is going to be a priority for them when they have to pay guys that are just, like, to be blunt, more productive and produce more points than he does.
Yeah, and I actually think they may. I think honestly, this is going to be I could be completely off base. I'm not locked on Florida Panthers. Go listen to Armando. He's been on
the dog.
He's been on a generational run lately. Dude, with how good those Panthers have been.
Armando rocks. Yeah, always go listen to him.
So don't take my word for word. I could be completely off base with what I'm about to say, but it's kind of how my mindset was with the Aaron Ekblad situation yesterday. Is are you targeting short-term success or long-term success, right? Because Sam Bennett right now, he's in his prime. He could help you absolutely in the next few years, but you're going to have to sign him to a long-term contract, and that by the end of that contract, you'll have a lot of guys on the back end of their careers. You're going to have to make things work, make trades happen. You could let him walk right now, save the money, and reinvest it in a guy who you acquired at the trade deadline and has been a massive fit, but on a short-term deal in Brad Marchand. Obviously 37 years old, but he has also come along this playoffs. 13 points in 16 playoff games for Brad Marchand. He fits so well in the Florida Panthers lineup, and you, at 37 years old, you can get him for 1 or 2 years to fill a very similar role in your team and reinvest that money elsewhere. Maybe keep Ekblad. And that's the thing. That's the thing about this whole conversation with every single one of these players is they have so many different routes they could go. They could let Bennett and his possible $9 million contract walk and keep Nico Sturm, Nate Schmidt, and Brad Marchand, or reinvest that and keep Aaron Ekblad. They could let Aaron Ekblad walk and let Sam Bennett and keep Sam Bennett. Like, I think they should prioritize keeping Sam Bennett, but it's all going to come down to no crap. It's going to come down to the money. But there's also the avenue, Scotty. Let's not forget that they have proven that they can get players to take less than market value to stay with a winner. Sam Reinhart did it literally last year. 50 goals from Sam Reinhart. He took less than $9 million, which he could have easily gotten on the free agent market. So I find it hard to believe he's going to hit the free agent market at this point for the same reasons that you stated. He's really worked himself into that conversation of being a part of that team's core. But if he does, I think it's also hard to believe that Sam Bennett would want to come to Detroit outside of a massive overpay, which is how it always works in free agency. Because unlike Aaron Ekblad having the I'm from Windsor, connection, why would he come to Detroit minus a massive overpay when he can get an overpay from better teams to go there? I mean, Toronto would want Sam Bennett. Like, they need that rough and tumble physical style. He's from Ontario. So that fit seems to work, especially if they let Marner walk. You replace Marner with a physical-edged Bennett. You still have all that high-end scoring. It's hard to picture Bennett choosing Detroit unless you just massively overpay above that 7.7 by 7.7 that he's going to be getting.
Yeah, I think the conversation with him is more just Florida versus the field than it is like Detroit versus Florida or Detroit versus whoever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think with Ekblad, especially with the Wings having Sider, that's a little bit more of like, how do you sell him on Detroit? I think it would be, if the money's right, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you promise, you're going to play top 6, really, no matter what. You're either going to play top line wing or 2C. It's pretty, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's pretty cut and dry where he fits into this lineup card. So I'm not too worried about, again, if the Wings are willing to pay what his market value is. I'm not too worried about them being able to do that. I think it really is just more so because he's going to have a similar role on just about any team that signs him in free agency, right? Like, I don't think anyone's going to sign him to be their 1C and lead them to the promised land. But I feel like he's going to be either a top 6 wing or a middle 6 center, kind of wherever he ends up. So I think it's kind of much more about the is Florida just going to let him walk than it is more so, like, hey, make Detroit look good.
Well, and I think you brought up a really good point as to why he could choose Detroit outside of a massive overpay, and that is the role. You just said it. Detroit has the role for him. Detroit needs a top-line wing. They could use a top 6 center. He could fill both those roles. They need more bolster on their second power play unit. He brings that. They need a huge physical presence. He brings that. So his role, as you just put, is secured, and that's a great reason why he would choose Detroit along with the contract. So, I mean, I think, and the team's an upcoming team. They're going to be competitive for a long time in theory, but that's what they would be saying to him. So, I mean, there are reasons why, but I just think it's going to be hard to pull him away from Florida, especially because of how he's playing. I don't think Florida's going to want to let him go.
No, and in terms of pulling him away from Florida, I think that's totally fair. Like, I think the ball is in the Panthers' court, really. Like, right. I don't. Right. I think if he had it his way, he would, get paid and stay. It's just a matter of whether he's a priority for the Panthers. That's all.
Correct. Well, Scotty, this was a fun conversation. I think we're both, you notice I've changed these from should the Red Wings pursue Sam Bennett or pursue X, because a lot of times the answer from us is yes. It's yes in this category as well. It's more about what are the pros and cons. Is cons short for concerns? Is that what we were trying to figure out earlier? No. What is cons short for? You're a writer. Tell me these things.
No. It's not. It's Latin. I don't know. It just.
Is it?
Just like pretty much everything. Yeah. I don't know. Somebody's going to be like, no, it's not. It means this, but I'm like 90% sure that's a Latin origin thing. And yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool.
Good to know.
Yeah. And I don't know what the Latin phrase is. So like, it's really just me saying, oh, it's like something else. And that's kind of all I know.
We're going to be doing a mailbag tomorrow. So you have until about 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday to get your guys' questions in. I posted a Twitter post, a Facebook post, and a YouTube post asking for you guys to put your questions in the comments below. So head there and leave your comments, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can on tomorrow's episode. We're in off-season mode. Mailbag season, baby. Scotty, final thoughts?
Pros and cons is a shortened version of the Latin phrase pro et contra, which means for and against.
Ah.
I'm him, honestly. We ball.
Wait, you were like 50% sure that you were right, but okay, we ball.
I said 90. I literally actually said the percentage that I was confident in, and you still got it wrong. I literally said the number out loud.
See,
I said
what you
90%.
said versus what your vibe said was different. Your vibe said 50%.
It's not what I said, it's how I said it. You probably hear that a lot. Right.
Yeah. All right. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.